Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the January 18th, 2020, Happy New Year all, public meeting of the Virginia Beach Planning Commission. My name is Dee Oliver, and I serve as the chairman of the commission. And before we get started, I have asked Commissioner Inman to lead us in prayer, and this will be followed by the pledge with Commissioner Hornsley.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today thanking you for your guidance and wisdom. As we begin this hearing today, guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Help us to remember our responsibility to serve our community with great insight, guided by understanding, wisdom, and respect for all. As we make decisions today, help us to promote the common good as we work together for the betterment of our great city. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and our efforts here today. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Inman and Commissioner Hornsley. I have asked Commissioner Redmond to introduce the members of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start on this side over here, which, if you're sitting out here, would be your left side. All alone over there is Kay Wilson. She is a deputy city attorney who's in charge of planning matters, and she keeps us out of trouble, which we appreciate. We have a couple vacancies at present on the commission, which are awaiting city council appointment and approval, and when those two appointments were made, we'll tell you who would normally fill those two seats. George Alcaraz is seated next door. He is a contractor and a business owner, and he represents the Beach District. To George's left is Jack Wall. Jack's a civil engineer. He represents the Rose Hall District. Next to George is Don Horsley. Don Horsley is a farmer, a Hokie, and a longtime member of this commission. In the middle is Dee Oliver. She is our chairwoman, and she is a funeral director. She serves at large. I should have mentioned Mr. Horsley serves at large as well. Seated next to Dee is our vice chairman, David Weiner. David represents the Kempsville district, and he is a commercial salesman. Mr. Inman here to my right is an attorney, and he also serves at large. My name's Dave Redmond. I'm a commercial real estate broker, and I represent the Bayside district. To my left is Whitney Graham. Whitney is a land developer, and he represents the Lynn Haven district. Next to Whitney, moving further down to my left, Steve Barnes. Steve Barnes is a farmer. He represents the Princess Anne district. And next to Steve is Bobby Tahan. Bobby is the planning director, and he directs a very fine and professional staff, and we look forward to hearing him introduce some of his staff for your benefit. Mr. Tahan.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond. To my left, we have clerking today, Delina Cartwright and Pam Sandloop. We have our planning staff along also Bill Landfair, Waddell, zoning administrator Kevin Kemp, Marshall Coleman, Aubrey Treblecock, Ashby Moss, Will Miller, Jonathan Sanders, and Antoinette Fuchs, all planners or portions of our zoning staff here today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And our first order of business is the explanation of the rule, and our city clerk will give those to us now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Virginia Beach Planning Commission takes pride in being fair and courteous to all parties in attendance. It is important that all involved understand how the commission normally conducts its meetings. It is equally important that everyone treat each other and the members of the commission with respect and civility. The commission requests that if you have a cell phone, please either silence it or turn it off. This is an abbreviated explanation of the rules. The complete set of rules is located in the front of the Planning Commission agenda. Following is the order of business for this public hearing. Withdrawals and deferrals. The chairman will ask if there are any requests to withdraw or defer an item on the agenda. Consideration of these requests will be made first. Consent agenda. The second order of business is the consideration of the consent agenda, which are those items that the Planning Commission believe are unopposed and which have a favorable staff recommendation, and then the regular agenda. The commission will then proceed with the remaining items on the agenda. Please note that the actions taken by the commission today are in the form of a recommendation to the Virginia Beach City Council. Final decision to approve or disapprove an application will be made by the City Council. The Commission thanks you for your attendance, and we hope that your experience here today leaves you feeling that you have been heard and treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next order of business is to address those items to be deferred or withdrawn. Do we have any items to be withdrawn?
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that item number
9.
nine, item number 9 we've received correspondence requesting withdrawal for that application.
Great, thank you. Is there any opposition to this item being withdrawn on the agenda today? Heard none. May I have a motion to withdraw item number 9, please?
Madam Chair, I move we withdraw item number 9.
Have a second?
Second.
The vote is open.
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 9 has been withdrawn.
And do we have any items on the agenda today to be deferred? The chair has, we have none, which is great. The next order of business will address those that have been placed on the consent agenda, and our Vice Chair, Commissioner Weiner, will handle that portion of this
Thank you,
agenda today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 19 items on the consent agenda today. First item is item 1, Village Church, an application and modification of conditions for religious use on 4013 Indian River Road, Princess Anne District. Do we have a representative for this item? Please come forward. State your name for the record, please.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chairman, Commissioner. My name is Ralph Wormley, trustee with Village Church, and we do agree with our recommendation.
Great, thank you, sir. You may have a seat. Does anybody have any opposition for this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Barnes has been asked to read this into the record, please.
Thank you, sir. This proposed modification to extend the use of a mobile unit for 5 additional years and to construct a handicap ramp is acceptable. However, a permanent structure should be pursued by the church space needs. The church is still fundraising for additional improvements to the main church building, which includes a new classrooms, a fellowship hall, additional office space, and library. Staff has recommended a condition to limit the extension for keeping the mobile unit on the site for 5 years. There are 6 conditions with this application that the staff has recommended.
Thank you, sir. Next is item number 2, Redhead Realty, an application for a conditional use permit for non-commercial marina in the Princess Anne District. Do we have a representative? Yeah.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'd like to thank you for your time and service to the city, and we greatly appreciate your placing our application on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Barnes gets to do this one.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a modification or a construction or reconstruction of a dilapidated boathouse that has been in this location for probably 100 years. So they use it as hunting and fishing clubs and have only for that and have for years. There's no environmental impact that has been seen. So the staff recommends approval of this. I think there are 3 recommended conditions on this also.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. The next item is item number 5, Town Center Associates, an application for a conditional use permit for an indoor recreation facility and property located at 4621 Columbus Street, Lynn Haven District. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Work with Marta Hoffman, representing that space. Appreciate you guys taking this on the consent line.
All the conditions acceptable. All right,
Thanks, sir.
thank you. Is there any opposition for this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Graham has been asked to read this into the record, please.
This request is for a conditional use permit for an indoor recreation facility in the former Dick's Sporting Goods building at Town Center. The applicant's proposed uses include the state-of-the-art entertainment, recreation, interactive sports activities. The zoning ordinance allows an indoor recreation facility of 7,500 square feet or less as a matter of right. As the size of the proposed facility is approximately 84,000 square feet, a conditional use permit is required. The proposed facility will include bowling lanes, arcade areas, laser tag, electric go-karts, mini golf, and an overhead suspended ropes course, bumper cars, and escape room. Staff finds the proposed conditional use permit request for an indoor recreation facility acceptable. The use is consistent with the comprehensive plan's vision for the Pembroke Strategic Growth Area, which includes recommendations for a high-density mix of urban uses. Staff recommends approval of this application.
Thank you, sir. Next is item 6, Ferguson Wedding Company, an application for a conditional use permit for assembly use, 2105 West Great Neck Road in the Lynn Haven District. Please state your name for the record.
Amberly Carter?
All the conditions acceptable?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Graham has been asked to read this one also.
The applicant is proposing to operate a banquet hall within a 3,000 square foot unit in one of the existing buildings on the site. Per the zoning ordinance, the banquet hall is considered an assembly use and is allowed in the B2 zoning district with a conditional use permit. And as such, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to operate the business. The applicant will host charter meetings, professional social gatherings, company training, vow renewals, weddings, birthdays, fundraisers, and charity events. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. The next item is item number 7, James P. Wooten, an application for modifications of conditions of property located on 1732 Lovitz Road, Lynn Haven District. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Robert Simon for the record, Waterfront Consulting, here to represent this application. We thank you for your time and consideration, and we agree with all the conditions.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Inman has been asked to read this into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner. This is an application for a modification of conditions for community boat dock. It's located on private property and of course, the piers are into Broad Bay, adjacent to the property at 1732 Lovitz Pond Lane. The applicant's proposing to expand the existing pier on the property, and it'll be used by the applicant and the adjacent neighbor to accommodate additional watercraft owned by the two property owners. It's not anticipated it will have any negative impact on the neighborhood. The applicant has submitted a joint permit application, and the request is currently under consideration by Virginia Marine Resources Commission and the Corps of Engineers. The conditions are that the boat dock revisions and extensions will be substantially constructed and as depicted on the plan submitted with the application by the applicant, and there will be also no commercial use of the dock. Having heard these recommendations of the staff that be approved, we agree and have put it on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Inman. Next is item number 10, an ordinance to amend sections 233.1, 901, and 2003 pertaining to eating and drinking establishments in the B4K Historic Kempsville zoning district. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Mr. Tahan is going to describe this to us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner. This text amendment is a proposal to add what essentially boils down to restaurant facilities with drive-through facilities in the B4K zoning district, which is our historic Kempsville area. The original plan master plan for Kempsville was adopted in 2006, which did call for a mix of uses, but did limited non-pedestrian-oriented uses on the site. More recently, in 2014, we did a text amendment to address some market conditions to allow for drive-through facilities for pharmacies, dealing with current market conditions and current current development factors, we are proposing to expand the drive-through facilities to be allowed for restaurants, noting the following performance and development standards. The key ones that are there that if the proposed drive-through facility shall not be located between the building and the right-of-way unless it is screened from view with a Category 1 landscape buffer. Noting that we do have one amendment from the staff report, noting that the drive-through facility shall not utilize exterior speakers that are audible at the property line. We added an additional words to that, adjacent to residential uses. So we wanted to make sure we clarified that. And also another key factor is that it's restricted to one lane and that they cannot operate between midnight and 5 a.m. This proposed text amendment is sponsored by Councilwoman Abbott, and staff does recommend approval.
Thank you, sir. The next is item number 11, which is a City of Virginia Beach, an ordinance to amend Section 111 of the city's zoning ordinance pertaining to definitions to add Sections 209.7 pertaining to student work housing. Mr. Kemp.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is a proposed amendment to our ordinance, which will make it easier for property owners in the city to provide appropriate and safe housing for students participating in the J-1 visa work travel program. Just to give you a brief background, this is a program where over 110,000 students from countries all over the world come to this country for the summer to work. They pay a fee for the program, but they do have to pay their way and find their own housing once here. At the oceanfront alone, we had 1,100 students last year, and it's estimated that their service to the community contributes $8 to $9 million a year to our economy. So it's a very valuable service and one we take seriously, and we would like to make it easier for them to find housing. The specifics of the ordinance are that we are going to add a definition of family, which includes not more than 8 of these student workers can live in one house. Before, it was limited to 4 people. And it does reference back to the Virginia Maintenance Code, which does protect against overcrowding. So it does have to meet all those applicable codes. Staff brings this ordinance forward. It is sponsored by Councilman Tower. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Okay, the next items on the consent agenda are for the short-term rental. The Planning Commission places the following applications for a conditional use permit for short-term rental on the consent agenda. As these applications meet the applicable requirements for Section 241.2 of the zoning ordinance, staff supports the applications and there's no known opposition for the following items: 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. That being said, I move for approval on the consent agenda, items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, I have to read them again, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to support all of these on consent. However, I would note that with regard to, specifically to agenda item number 5 of Town Center Associates 12 LLC, I will be abstaining. I am a commercial real estate broker with Tavares Real Estate, Inc. Tavares Real Estate, Inc. Leases and manages the town center, and various principals of the company where I work are principals in Town Center Associates. I don't believe, very frankly, that affects me in any way. I've never earned a nickel from the Town Center, but for purposes of appearance, I nonetheless tend not to vote on these matters, so I'll abstain in this case. Ms. Wilson, does that satisfy your legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I second the motion.
The vote is open.
A recorded vote of 9-0. Agenda items 1, 2, 5, with Commissioner Redmond abstaining from agenda item 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26 have been approved by consent. Okay.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all the applicants today who had a matter on the consent agenda at this hearing, and these items will be scheduled for hearing at the City Council agenda. And so if you don't have any further business, if you were on the consent agenda, this would be a great time for you to leave. We'll give everybody a second to leave. Yeah, will do. All right, thank you. The next order of business will be to address the remaining matters on our agenda. And would our city clerk please call the first item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item to be heard is agenda item number 3, in which we do have 2 speakers for today. It is Bouchard Family Real Estate LLC, an application for a subdivision variance, section 4.1J of the subdivision regulations on property located on the northeast corner of Gatewood Avenue and Paris Street, located in the Beach District.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney, representing the applicants. Mr. Steve Bouchard is here, along with Josh Motto and some of his folks on his team. The property that's a subject of this application is a part of a subdivision that was recorded in Princess Anne County in 1949, before there was a zoning ordinance and before there was a subdivision ordinance. That subdivision was developed a few years later, but still close to 70 years ago. The properties are in this subdivision are zoned R5D. The homes in the subdivision, some are quite old, others are newer. There's redevelopment that's been taking place. Frankly, the area is very benefited by redevelopment. There are quite a number of duplexes in the subdivision. Again, it's zoned to R5D. My clients, who have been doing a lot of excellent work in the city, redeveloping areas that are very much in need of redevelopment, acquired this piece of property with the intent to develop by right exactly what is before you today. The right-of-ways are all improved and have been for half a century. The Gatewood Avenue right-of-way is a 60-foot wide right-of-way, and Paris Street is a 50-foot wide right-of-way, meeting all city current requirements for residential streets and exceeding it as far as Gatewood is concerned. These roads are dead ends. Paris Street goes east-west, about 6 lots in each direction, and Gatewood ends here. There is no, you heard this morning, no likelihood conceivable, foreseeable of any roadway improvements that would necessitate any right-of-way addition in addition to what exists today. Been doing this kind of work for 35 plus years. I suspect Mr. Inman has had a similar experience to what I'm going to describe. The City of Virginia Beach, anytime somebody in an existing neighborhood that was created a long time ago, if there is anything that is quote unquote substandard to what is required today, when you submit a re-subdivision plat, they come back with the standard, we want you to give us additional right-of-way. And they get it probably 60 or 70% of the time. Because people say, I don't need it, no problem, I'll give you the right-of-way. However, there are a number of circumstances when that's not the case, and I've represented many people over the years. Look, that's okay that you ask for it, but we aren't creating the need for it. Supreme Court of the United States is very clear, that you can't require me to give you land when I don't create the need for it. The Dolan-Tygard case and others, very clear. That's what happened here. We have a by right subdivision, and again, I've never, ever been up here asking for this variance before because it's never, ever been required before. So here we have lots on existing public streets, improved, been there for decades, and we're being told, guess what? We want this little curve on the corner that we're not going to use for anything. We're not going to improve it, but we want to give it to you. We want you to give it to us. Well, we'll be happy to give it to you. We'll be happy to give you a reservation. And once the plat's recorded to create this legal subdivision, we'll be happy to give it to you. No, you have to get a variance because our ordinance that has been ignored for years because similar things have happened in the city, just like we're doing, never been here before for it. Been recorded plats every time. So we are here once for the first time ever because somebody is saying that even though we don't, on the Supreme Court decisions, we don't have the right for you to take it from you, or excuse me, they can take it from you. We don't have the right to make you give it to us. We want you to give it to us. So that's the bottom line here. But we're going along with the program with this subdivision variance request. Okay? But these are legal lots that meet all the dimensional requirements. But when you tell us we got to give you that little corner, which we don't have a problem with, then you all of a sudden you lose a lot. Again, Dolan versus City of Tigard, 512 U.S. Supreme Court, page 374, 1994 Supreme Court case. It will not stand scrutiny. So that's the bottom line here. This neighborhood is developing, redeveloping, will continue to redevelop. That's what we want to see. Exactly what we need to see in this neighborhood. So that's the long and the short of it. That's why we're here. We are now being told, well, discretion has been used in the past, recognizing what the law says, but we don't feel like we can do that under the way our ordinance has been written all these years. So we're going to try to get the ordinance revised so that we have that discretion. Well, I don't think that's the right way to run the railroad, but it is what it is. We're here asking for a variance because they're saying they can't approve it any other way. And so then we get into this, does it fit the character of the neighborhood? The character of the neighborhood is going to change. It is already changing. Those of you who've been out there and rode around, you'll see it's changing. And for the most part, that's a good thing. So I hate to be so confrontational, but this is really not an application that ought to be here. And I think that's the long and the short of it. But we are here, and we would ask the commission, the hardship is that we're being told you don't get what you are legally entitled to that meets all the dimensional requirements because we want, not that we need, we want this little 21 feet on the corner. Well, the city wants to buy a lot for that 21 feet. That's their prerogative. I don't think they want to buy a lot for that 21 feet. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, we have two speakers. Courtney Miltz. If you would approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Courtney, and I thank the council. And
Excuse
I
me
understand
1 second.
what this.
Do you mind lowering your mic? There you go. Thank
Okay.
you.
I understand what this gentleman is saying, and we, as a neighborhood, a lot of us did not know about the R5 zoning back there. And we're a neighborhood of, third-acre lots, and the kids have places to run, and people come back there because they want a yard. They don't want to see their neighbor right close. We have people who've been there 40, 50 years. And, there's a neighbor right across the street. She's been there 40 years. And she cries every time she backs out of her driveway. Who's going to speak up for her?
It's all right. Take your time.
I understand construction's gonna happen, but be considerate of what's around. Take in the little guy. Take in the people who have lived back there for generations. I know 2 families by doing this petition. You know, they have 3 generations, both of them back there. And, you know, it's not all about this. It's like, if they had just said, we'll just build 2 homes, because that would be good for the neighborhood and be cohesive and have a continuity. And we considered our neighbors. We didn't just come in there and bulldozer everything and just... We thought about the other person. What is wrong with that? Damn, sorry.
It's quite all right.
So sorry. I wear it right here. I apologize. But I just see things going around the city that they're not very cute. They're the cohesiveness, the continuity, the thoughtfulness of our neighbor. You know, there's a subdivision right across the street on London Bridge. And these old folks, bless their hearts, they had to sell their acreage right next door. Now they have a house, their driveway, and this big, ugly brown fence, and then houses built right up on top of them. And I know they had to sell the property, and I know construction is allowed. I get that, but think about what's around you. What is wrong about thinking about your neighbor? I don't understand. It's not all about this. It's not all about money. We're people. We live in this neighborhood. I walk my dog in this neighborhood.
Ms. Mills, thank you. I hate to cut you off, but unfortunately, we allow 3 minutes per person.
Right. Just think about also the water runoff in these ditches they're building in front of these new homes where the water sits after a week of the storm. Scum is still there.
Okay.
So you're talking about mosquitoes.
Thank
You're
you.
talking about more spray.
Thank you.
Chesapeake watershed.
Thank you.
Gerald Fowler.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I own the duplex that's next to this property.
Mr. Fowler, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. Do you mind stating your name for the record?
Gerald Fowler.
Thank you.
I own the duplex that's next to the property. The thing that comes to my mind is there is development going on in that community, but normally what's been happening, they've been buying 2 properties, tearing them down, and building 1 house there. I thought there was a drive on to decrease the density. There's about 4 or 5 lots from this lot that you're considering today to the fence to the air station. I mean, it's right on top of it. And for years, they've been tearing places down and decreasing the density. This would triple it. And so that seems awful strange to me. If you look through the neighborhood, you see all the big lots, and then you see one with 3 houses on it. Something don't seem right. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Fowler? No? Thank you very much. Mr. Pradhan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to let the commission know that Steve Bichard has made multiple outreach efforts to the young lady, I'm sorry I didn't get her last name, I don't want to call it Courtney, but, and was not able to get any type of a response. He's more than willing to sit down with her and, you know, the folks in the neighborhood. You have an elevation of a 2-story structure that would go on this, these 2 lots that is set back. Well, that's the single-family one, but you have also the shared. The required setback from Gatewood Avenue, sorry, is 18 feet. This is at 24 feet, so it's further off. If you could build 1 house all at 18 feet. We've got the distance between this 10,000 square foot lot, and the house on the interior lot that's 5,000 square feet is over 30 feet. So this is not, this is doing, it's not trying to squeeze 3 structures. It's doing an attached, basically a duplex, and meets all the requirements and exceeds the requirements as far as setbacks concerned. So it's not something that is out of character with the duplexes that are in the neighborhood at all. Again, it's a 2-story. The folks that she referred to on London Bridge Road, we had the pleasure of representing them and the development that went around their house, and it's exactly what they wanted to take place. Again, it's interesting how things just get pulled out of the sky. The houses, the older homes in this neighborhood, the overwhelming majority of those that are still there were built before there was any stormwater management ordinance whatsoever. There really hasn't been a flooding or a resilience, I think is a better word, moving forward problem with this neighborhood, but with this redevelopment, there will be stormwater management that will have to be provided, and we cannot discharge any more water than has been discharged from the property as is currently developed. And so their city and the engineers will not permit, given the current environment especially, it'll be scrutinized to the nth degree. There won't be any additional stormwater to cause any problems in the public right-of-way. We've provided you with the re-subdivision plat and with the elevation for the structure to be built on the corner lot, which is the only issue here, as well as on the interior lot. So I'd be happy to answer any questions any of you may have, but we believe that, and Mr. Bouchard is more than willing to meet and talk to folks. I don't know what the concern, if you put the map up of the composite map of someone across the street, what it would be. You can see these are not large, wide lots. In fact, the houses are pretty close in here. So I'm really not sure what the concern is. When I graduated from law school, one of my high school buddies rented a duplex at the end of, actually I think it was the end of Wolf Street, which is I think one up. But you know, this area has had duplexes in it going back, and that was in the early 80s. So I realize it's a bit of a hodgepodge, if you will, somewhat transitional in nature, but that's what's going to happen. Is we're going to have areas like this that are redeveloping, and that's a betterment for everybody concerned, and including the people who own the property there. Be happy to answer any questions any of you may have.
Anybody have any questions?
I do. I'll start off, but if you could just hold tight, I want to ask Mr.
Sure.
Kahan.
Be happy to.
When the lots were created 70 years ago, the zoning was, I guess, shown what it was at that time. So if they're oversized lots and they're zoned R5, R5D or whatever, who created and how did that become where we've got an R5 but we've got oversized lots?
A little bit of history. These were the zoning didn't exist. This would have been greater, if these were platted at that point in time, greater Princess Anne County, where the actual city of Virginia Beach was just the oceanfront. So they were developed under the county's regulations. When they got annexed into the city, zoning was applied to it. Eventually it became R5D, which is can be single family and duplex development. So the pattern was probably created many years prior before we put the zoning on it versus the zoning creating the lot pattern.
So the R5, which signifies 5,000 square feet per lot, was assigned to those lots.
Correct.
Not taking into account that they were oversized lots. So the development in the future would be for 5,000 square foot minimum?
That would be what we would permit. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then my other question in the informal, your staff had said that the traffic control requirement for the radius wouldn't be required or wouldn't be used?
Correct. So during our review of the process, the subdivision regulations state that when there is a subdivision proposed for a corner lot like this, a corner radius is required. The waiver procedure for that is through the subdivision variance, as Mr. Burdon had noted. And we were told by traffic engineering during the review that they did not need the corner radius.
So the applicant's required, or has offered, I heard, a reservation. Is that still allowed with the city ordinance for reservation?
The ordinance the ordinance is currently written, requires a dedication. If it comes through in this, through the approval process of getting a subdivision variance, if the applicant would still like to do a reservation or not, we would still accept that, yes.
Okay.
I'll just add, we've agreed to provide a reservation. We've agreed to sign a agreement that once the plat's recorded, for 50 cents, whatever, we'll give them the 21 square feet. You know, I mean, it isn't, and Mr. Tahan is absolutely correct. The zoning was applied to the property when we actually got zoning, being the Prince Anne County, City of Virginia Beach, once the merger, to reflect what was there. Now, again, it's always had duplexes, and it's always had housing on larger, combinations of lots, which is not unusual for a lot of neighborhoods in Virginia Beach that have redeveloped over the course of time. Yeah, so that's all absolutely correct, and it isn't an aversion, even though it's not needed. There's not going to be road improvements here. These are dead-end streets. They're not going through to anywhere. So there's not going to be any improvement to these streets. Not going to be any widening of these streets. It's going to be the same as it's been for 70 years, and it worked out fine for 70 years. They haven't needed it. But we're not. My client's not here to get into a fight. He's all along said, we'll provide it to you, but there should be, there has been in the past discretion, and I'm not arguing who was right or who was wrong, but discretion's been exercised in situations like this have always been resolved in the past with either a reservation or we know we don't need it, we're not going to need it, but they're following the letter of what's in the ordinance, and that's probably what needs to be looked at.
Mr. Edmund.
Well, and don't go away, Mr. Burdon, because you may weigh in here if you like. But I just want to clarify, because we've had a lot going on this morning and today. As I understand this, the design standards set a requirement we do not need nor intend to use. Is that correct? Is that what I heard this morning and today?
Based on our review of uniformly, the reservation or dedication is required for subdivisions on corner lots. So that is the uniform rule, but standard, but through our review, there's currently no intent to utilize or expand on that, utilizing that radius. That is correct.
Okay.
The ordinance is based on new subdivisions. Right. I mean, that's why it's there.
Right.
Okay, so it's totally understandable that it's there, but there's nothing in the actual verbiage, not the way it has been previously, and discretion has been used. And again, I'm not here to argue that, that anyone is wrong, but in the past, discretion has always been, in my experience anyway, used to recognize that, we asked for it, but this is not a new subdivision. I mean, it's a subdivision of this little property, but as it pertains to the roads are there, they're developed, they've been there for, 50 plus years. So that's why this is a bit of a.
Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Burdon? Thank you. The hearing now is closed, and we're going to open it up amongst the commissioners. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go last.
You go last? I don't think that's an option. Mr. Redmond?
And the reason I ask that is because that kind of puts this application, I think you view it in a different light when you realize, I mean, I really do view this as something it's a problem with the ordinance. And it's quite possible that sometimes, the ordinances and zonings are inappropriate to various applications when we see them. And I view this, technicality isn't even the right word. I mean, it doesn't even apply. We don't intend to avail ourselves of it. It's, as Mr. Burdon says, it's for new subdivisions, really. And for sure, this neighborhood will incur more redevelopment. This strikes me as an appropriate redevelopment. What the applicant has proposed seems to me as a way to address it. And instead of one lot having 5,000 feet, it's going to have 4,979 or something like that. It's a difference without a distinction. So it seems to me that it's a, an appropriate resolution to an instance where the ordinance itself is not really appropriate to the land use pattern that we're seeing. There are less attractive, less palatable ways to develop this and lots of other properties. I do think the product that they're proposing will be the freshest, nicest looking product, within eyesight of this. One of the photos we saw had a house with siding and a bunch of green, moss growing on the side of it. Well, this is going to be a brand new, modern, attractive place, and built in a way that really fits into this land pattern. So sorry to go on so long. And I know that there are folks who are upset about this. I think perhaps somewhat unduly, it seems to me an appropriate way to approach this. Thank you.
Yes, David.
I did ride through the neighborhood yesterday. Just wanted to, because usually when we get an application for denial, when we don't get a chance to go there, I like to go look at it just to see what it is. And I did notice turning off of, not Potter's Road, but London Bridge, the first three houses that you see are actually larger than what's being proposed now. So there are different types of houses in there. There are very small duplexes, but I always have to look back in the aging housing stock that we have in the city, and you get somebody that wants to come in and tear down houses and build brand new ones. I kind of want to go that direction. I like that a lot. So I'm going to be supporting it.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'll be supporting it as well. I completely agree. I think that when you have a developer that's coming into a neighborhood and they're going to build new homes, I think it's for the homeowners that live in that neighborhood, I think it's a good thing. I think these are very attractive elevations that they've submitted. I think it's going to benefit the neighborhood. We're talking about a dedication that is 21 square feet. It's teeny. But what it's doing is it's preventing redevelopment. So anyway, I'll be supporting it.
Anybody else? George?
Yeah, I'll say just a few things. Like you guys appreciate what you said, and with the 15,000 square feet that they have as the owner, developer, or whatever interest they may have, and then you go through the development phase, you go through the process, and then you're told that 21 square feet on a corner is going to be needed. It's a harsh word, but I take it as a taking, and that's not what I don't really like that word, but I didn't want it to go that far, but it kind of seems to go that route. However, I don't know if it's an option with the city, if they can do a reservation. If it's ever needed, then it's there, and then they have it, but then it qualifies them for the 3 lots to do the semi-attached and a single family. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Second.
The vote is open.
Second.
Hold on.
Oh,
Hold on.
sorry.
Hold on.
I need to
Mike.
take note that, make a disclosure that I am on the Board of Directors, or Advisory Board, Town Bank for Virginia Beach, and Town Bank's listed as a potential lender on this project. As an advisory board member, I have no decision-making power over whether the loan's made or not made, and I have no financial interest in the outcome. I will be voting on the matter.
I too need to disclose that I am on the Town Leadership Advisory Board. Do not have any kind of financial gain in this project, and I will be voting.
And Chair, to clarify, to align with Mr. Alcaraz's
Yes, thank you.
motion to approve, I believe that there should be a condition that addresses that there should be easement or reservation provided for the 21 square feet and not the dedication,
Okay.
as that one condition. for the
Okay,
report.
great. Thank you. So you want us to remake the motion, or we just add that
I
in?
believe his motion included that when he
Okay,
read through it, when he discussed it, so.
all right. Thank you. Did you vote?
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 3 has been approved with conditions as amended. Madam Chair, our next item of business is item number 4, Franklin Johnston Group Management and Development LLC, which is an application for a conditional rezoning I-1 Light Industrial District to conditional A36 Apartment District on property located at 4545 South Boulevard, located in the Rose Hall District.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Rob Beeman. I'm a local land use attorney with the law firm Troutman Sanders, here today on behalf of the applicant. It came to our attention during the informal session that there was a letter of opposition that was submitted to the planning department. I think there were two main issues that were discussed in that letter, one of which is stormwater and the other of which is traffic. With respect to traffic, I believe Mr. Lohman covered that in the informal, that this right-of-way is well below current capacity and will remain below capacity when this development is completed. Additionally, with respect to stormwater, as Mr. Redmond noted, this will be the first time that this project has been submitted to a stormwater review by the city and the state, and as a result of this project, the stormwater runoff will be reduced by about 20%, which is what I understand from our engineer. So I think we're going to actually make both of these conditions better, and with that, I respectfully request your approval of this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one speaker today,
All right.
Chris Tipple.
Welcome.
My name is Chris Tipple, and I'm here as the property manager and the owner's representative of 4525 South Boulevard, the Southport Building, and 4455 South Boulevard, the Prism Plaza Building. We are opposed to the zoning change for several reasons, but the two major ones are flooding. There are already existing flooding issues directly on South Boulevard by the property in question. In front of 4560 South Boulevard, the Southgate Center, even with a moderate rain, it already floods, becomes impassable. There are times where cars have to cut through the parking lot of 4560 just to get through that street. It was moderately flooded yesterday during the rain that we had. And second was the traffic on South Boulevard. Where South Boulevard meets Independence, it is right turn only. There are many times during the day where you have to wait several light cycles just to get on Independence Boulevard. The other option, if you wanted to make a left on Independence, was either cut through the Independence Business Center or Edwin Drive. Again, several light cycles, and many times during the day, especially during rush hour, are needed to exit. There are days where it's 4 and 5 light cycles during rush hour. You have to wait for the light to get out of there. But our main concern is the flooding in the area. It has been a problem for many, many years. We don't see this project or this change in zoning making it any better. It can only make it worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak on that in a little more depth?
Yes, ma'am. Just one more thing to add on the stormwater. We will also be installing curb and guttering along South Boulevard, which should also help ameliorate the any flooding issues within the right-of-way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? None? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more speakers? That
No,
was it.
ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to close the hearing now and just open it up amongst the commissioners. Anybody have anything? Yes.
I'll say a few things. I'm in favor of the project. It's expected that the flooding will be looked at and scrutinized very, very closely with the Development Services Center. So it's, I feel that will be, addressed, and that it will not be, at least at minimum, exacerbated by the new development. As for the traffic, I'm sure that, it will generate additional traffic. But it was, fairly well addressed by traffic engineering in the informal, and that I think South Boulevard was a collector, and with major primary connecting to the major primary roadways, being Independence, adjacent to it, and then right onto 264. So I can't see where it's not going to generate more traffic. I mean, that certainly will be the case, and it's expected that the drainage will be addressed. So I'm in favor of the project.
Great. Yes, Whitney?
Uh,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead.
Did you just call me Whitney?
No, I called him Whitney.
No, I agree with Jack. I mean, the stormwater is, I mean, there are opinions and there are facts. And when you add stormwater control facilities to properties that don't have them, flooding gets better. And with regard to traffic, you have to go there. South Boulevard is not busy by any kind of standard. I mean, if you travel up and down South Boulevard, there just aren't a lot of cars on it. And I do. I have no doubt that at peak travel times, at 4:45 or 5:15, you might wait more than one light cycle. You will at any intersection in the city because it's 5 o'clock. That's just the way the world works. So I don't really find that to be I don't find that to be something that that really animates me on this. This is a really attractive building. It's in a very appropriate use, I think, for this piece of property. It is no, it's not the prom queen today. And in its place, I think, is going to be a very attractive, very high-quality residence for people who are probably going to enjoy the amenities that they have, including the YMCA and the park and the proximity to town center and all of the things that this part of the city offers. So I think it is a benefit, and I'll look forward to supporting it. And so I do agree with Mr. Wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I agree as well, and I will be supporting it. This is a property that is very, very visible from the interstate when you're coming into Virginia Beach. And I think this is a great reuse of this property. It's going to be attractive. It's going to provide, people that can shop at town center, people that hopefully, work in town center will have a place to live. They'll, potentially could work at the office building across the street. But I think this is a great reuse. I think it's very attractive, and I'll be supporting it.
Great. Anybody else? We have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve agenda item number 4.
I second.
All right.
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 4 has been approved.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is agenda item number 8, 7-Eleven Incorporated, an application for a conditional use permit automobile service station on property located at 2205 Princess Anne Road, located in the Princess Anne District.
Madam Chair, for the record again, Rob Beeman, a local land use attorney with the law firm Troutman Sanders. One of the things that Mr. Landfair mentioned during the informal session this morning that's of particular importance with this application is a proposed deviation in the setback along Veterinary Way. If we could go to the site plan just real quick, I wanted to explain a little bit about that. Is there a colored site plan? Yeah, there we go. There are a couple of unique circumstances that affect this property that are generating our need for that deviation. First, approximately 20% of the front of the site has been taken as part of the expansion of Princess Anne Road just relatively recently over the last couple of months. Additionally, the top of the site and the bottom of the site, as you're viewing it here, are both subject to 35-foot setbacks due to the fact that we're surrounded on 3 sides by rights-of-way. And third, there's a 10-foot telephone easement running along the entirety of the back of the site. So for that reason, the building envelope where the building is located is very tight. And so we'd like to request that just the bottom corner encroach. It's actually 11 feet within the setback to a 24-foot setback. As Mr. Lampier stated, this is a small cul-de-sac, Veterinary Way, that serves only our property and the property behind us, and across the street is just forest. So with that, I thank you for your consideration, and we'll stand by for any questions you might have.
Great, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Do we have any speakers?
No, ma'am.
All right. Anybody have any questions? We'll close the commission for any comments. We have any comments? No? Well, yes, Mr. Emmett.
I move we approve the application.
All right.
Madam Chair, to note, the item was heard as the applicant has provided. They are requesting deviation to the required setbacks, which is different than
What?
the conditions that are provided. So if the commission is planning on moving forward with approval, including the deviation, I do recommend that we edit condition number 1 to, after the date of the site plan, to state, actually, I'll just read it. When the property is developed, it will be in substantial conformance with the submitted exhibit entitled Concept Plan prepared by Blakeway, dated August 29, 2018. The setback deviation is noted on the plan. Said plan has been exhibited to the City of Virginia Beach. The City Council is on file with the Department of Planning. And also strike condition number 7.
In moving for approval, I would adopt the verbiage that Mr. DeHaan just stated for condition number 1, and that condition number 7 was be deleted.
Okay.
No, second.
Okay.
The vote is open. By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 8 has been approved with conditions as amended.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is agenda item number 12, Kelly M. Allen, which is an application for a conditional use permit short-term rental on property located at 4215 MacArthur Road, located in the Rose Hall District.
Hi, Ms. Allen. If you'll state your name for the record, please.
Kelly M. Allen.
Okay.
This is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath townhome. Our plan is, we've been using it as a short-term rental, managing it through an Airbnb. We are managing it ourselves. So far, what the city has brought to us, as far as conditions, we are more than in compliance, and we would continue to do so as individual couple managing this property. We have a lot of stake in the community. We live about 10 minutes away. And my husband has a flexible work schedule. He's available pretty much any time of day. And we make that information available both to the temporary visitors as well as the neighbors in our community.
How long have you been renting this?
Relatively new for us. We purchased the property in late July, I believe, of last year. We filed paperwork with the city and have been renting it out since, I believe, August or September.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Are you aware of any complaints from any renters?
We are not, and we have contacted several of the neighbors. We gave them a business card with our contact information, and we've not heard any complaints. We've had nothing but very positive responses from our guests. We do go and check on the property regularly between guests. We've also installed a Ring doorbell with a video camera to make sure that we can maintain security, the view of the street, so that we know who is coming and going. And in fact, we did not even realize that it would be contested today. The city told us that there was no complaints as of the last email.
Great, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
We have one speaker today, Paula Schneider.
Welcome.
Paula Schneider. This is my first public hearing. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, but I wanted to make sure that I came. I am opposed to short-term rental. We live in a very congested, tight, almost crime-free community. We know our neighbors, we get along with each other, we help each other. Many of us, and I'm sorry, nobody approached me. I live right across the street. I never got a card, nobody talked to me. The neighbors I've talked to do not want short-term rentals in there. We don't know how it's going to affect our neighborhood. I've been there for 6 years. I've seen no crime except at this address, although I don't know that the new owners were there then. But how is this going to, down the road, affect my property values? We have lots of rentals in there. What happens when everybody wants to start doing a short-term rental? We don't need it in our neighborhood. It's fine the way it is. We like to know who our neighbors are. When you open this up to short-term rentals, we got a variety of people coming in, and we don't want it. We want to be connected with each other, and this is not the area to put a short-term rental. So we're opposed to it. I also worry about the landlord responsibility. Do they vet renters? And what is my recourse if there start to be problems with this short-term rental? What's my recourse? Do you people just do this and then it's left up to the neighborhood? I mean, I don't know how it works. So I am opposed, and I am speaking on behalf of several of the neighbors there that we do not want short-term rentals.
Well, I will help you with this a little bit. There is a number that is provided. I think it's 311.
Okay.
So if you have a complaint or problem, you call that number. Then it is registered with the city so that they have a record of issues with this particular address.
So if you approve this, we have a right as the neighbors to come, do we have to come back and ask you to remove the short-term rental?
Well,
I mean, is that an option that,
Well, they only, what is it, 5 years? They have it for 5 years, and they have to come back before. But prior to that, if there are legitimate complaints, then the city will look into it. City staff will go in and look at it and follow up on what's going on with their renters.
okay,
So
well,
and the people that own it, when they do get a complaint, they have to address it within, was it, how many hours? 30 minutes. So they have to be there. So when she said to you that they are in close proximity to their piece of property, they have to show up immediately to address the situation.
okay, well, I see absolutely no benefit whatsoever to put short-term rentals in our community, our tight, congested community, but I can see a lot of detriment coming from this, so.
Mr. Snyder, just to let you know where we came from, we've worked on this for 2 years to try and come up with an ordinance like this, okay? What you have to think about in another aspect is if we didn't come up with this ordinance, they could do this and just keep doing it without having, with nothing. So that's why we've come up with an ordinance.
Keep doing what?
Short-term rentals. They could keep using we didn't come up with an ordinance for the short-term rentals. They could have just kept doing it, and everybody in the city of Virginia Beach could do it. So we're trying to regulate it with conditional use permits. Okay, so that's.
So it is a conditional?
Yes, it is.
So it's kind of like a probationary period, so that,
So so you have the benefit of being in front of us to let us know, and you have the ability to file a complaint with the city that the city will be able to keep records of. And in that way, we're able to track them.
Okay.
Prior to this ordinance, you wouldn't have this platform and recourse in order.
so what you're
to file.
telling me is that you have more control doing it this way as opposed to
We have
a
more.
landlord just bringing in people?
Exactly. So we have more control over your neighbors that will do the Airbnb than you do of the person buying your house, and you just happen to not like the neighbors, and they're there for 20 years.
Right. We love our neighbors.
Well, I was using it as an example.
Well, except for
but-
John, no.
So we're all working on this together as hard as we possibly can.
Okay, but our fears, and I say our because I'm not the only one. I've been there for 6 years. Many of these people have been there longer than me. But the fears are that all of a sudden, because we do have quite a few rentals in that area, that all of a sudden all the rentals now want to be short-term. And like I said, we know our neighbors, we work with each other, we help each other, and we don't want to lose that. We like the character of our neighborhood. We don't want to lose it.
Yes, Mr. Horsley.
They said they've been doing this since back in the early fall. Have you had any complaints? I mean, did anything?
Well, we had the drug selling and the robbery, and those people ended up leaving. I don't know that they were the owners then.
I'm talking about since the late.
Yeah, and I'm saying right after that, rehab started. So I don't know at what point that I guess the new owners bought the property. Whether those people that were doing the crimes in the house, whether they bought it from whoever had it before. So I can't address that. I don't know. But since then, most of it's been vacant because I think it's been rehabbed. And right now, there's a gentleman, a service guy living there, and I've had no problems with him. He's been there a few weeks. So, no problem there. But that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be.
Well, that's what you do have a recourse now. By being this way, you can notify through the 311 or notify the planning department that you got a complaint. And these people here, they don't want to have complaints because
Right.
if they get complaints, then they can come back here and they lose their permit, and then they won't be able to do it. So, so you have more recourse now, like they said before, than you had before. So hopefully what they have done will help clean up what the problems you had earlier with the drugs and the whatever.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've been there 6 years. That's the only crime I have seen in our neighborhood. So.
But as others come about, you just stay aware and be diligent in.
And I would like to ask you, don't turn every rental there to a short-term rental, please. We don't need B&Bs in this congested little neighborhood. There's not even any place to park, so we don't need any more.
Well, they do have a parking requirement, so they have to meet that. They have to park on.
Well, I mean, each townhome has room, but.
Right, but they have to follow that.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I feel a little bit better, thank you, sir. But like I said, I still don't see any benefit to it, but as long as it doesn't affect anything else and our neighbors are, we have our same neighborhood, I'm not trying to stop anybody from earning money, but I'm concerned about where I live. So, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come up? Yes, go right ahead. And maybe you can speak to a couple of her concerns.
Thank you. First of all, just as a little bit more information about me and my husband, I'm a special education teacher at the school that is literally right next to that neighborhood. We are very, very vested in that community. We're very familiar with what goes on there. We did purchase the property after what she was referring to. We knew we were purchasing it as a rehabbed unit. Since that time, our goal is to make that a family-friendly, beautiful property for people to enjoy. We installed, like I mentioned before, we did install the Ring doorbell because we do want to make sure that anyone who comes to that residence is there for the right reasons and are there when they're supposed to be and that they leave when they're supposed to. We have also, the regulations for in the home while people are using that rental are actually stricter than what the city requires. We have requested that our guests have no parties with groups larger than what would be renting the property. We've also asked that noise be kept at a minimum after 9 p.m. rather than 10 p.m. to respect the fact that it is a family community. We also, like I said, we do make our contact information very available, and we do want to know. We want to know if there's any concerns from our neighbors because It matters to us. That community matters to us. And as you guys know, each individual rental has to be approved by you. So I hope that you'll see that this is something personal for us. It's one property. We are not a big company. We're not looking to buy out the community and turn it into something it's not. We are one couple wanting one property for something that we can do for the community and ourselves.
Great. All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Is it Miss Miller? You might, if you have the opportunity, probably reach out and speak to her a little bit and let her have the opportunity to know you.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you. I think we're good. We'll close this. On the commissioners, anybody have anything? Okay. We'll make a motion.
Move for approval.
Okay. We have a second?
A second.
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 12 has been approved. Okay. Our next item of business is agenda item number 13, John Bradley Gribble, an application for a conditional use permit short-term rental on property located at 512 9th Street, located in the Beach District. If the applicant or the applicant's representative, thank you.
Hello.
Morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
If you'll state your name for the record, please.
Sure, it's John Bradley Gribble. Just a little background on it. We've owned the house for about 10 years. My wife and I, we lived in it for 8 years. About 2.5 years ago, we had to move to Maryland because of work. We went the traditional route when we moved out of the house, rented it to a doctor and her boyfriend, had them interviewed, met our neighbors, everything went pretty well. 2 years later, through 18 months, they pretty much ruined the house with animals and not telling us when there was dripping insulation and caused major damage, $20,000 worth of work to the house. So they got out. We knew we had to do something a little bit different. We were stopping in and checking on them, but obviously we weren't invading their privacy, going inside and beating on them. So we went the Airbnb route. The property, after we rehabbed it, we met with all of our neighbors, told them what we were doing. We lived there for 8 years, so I was very involved in the area. I was the lake cleanup captain. And so anyways, before we left, though, we did, the person who owns the house next door to us, we have them as our property manager because we live 4.5 hours away. We don't want to, if something comes up, it needs to be addressed. So we do have a property manager out there. So far, we've rented the house for 6 months, been going pretty well. Had no complaints from any of the people renting. Really, nothing from the neighbors that we were made aware of. I have spoken with one of my neighbors today who's here to speak as well. Parking is a big problem at the beach. Our house, we widened our driveway in order to allow for the 3 spots at this place. But the challenge is that this street is not, it's not permit parking at the oceanfront. All the other places are permit parking, ours isn't for some reason. And then as our neighborhood has been completely demolished, all the old houses have been getting taken down and they're building multifamily duplexes, you name it, they're building it more condensed, as we saw earlier, which, hey, makes the neighborhood look better, but it doesn't address the street parking. So one of the things we're really, our house abides by the regulations for the 3 cars. Something that we spoke with my neighbor about today is we're going to have a camera outside so that we can help self-police. If a 4th car parks behind the other cars or does something goofy, they shouldn't have to deal with that. We can monitor that. Or if there's a problem, they can talk to to our property manager, who they're aware of that we have the property manager. But the big issue is our street is not permitted, and it's turning into quite a cluster down there. So I know this isn't the forum for that. We probably need to go down another route for that.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody have any comments? Thank you very much.
We have one speaker, Stanley Vane.
Welcome.
My name is Stanley Vane. I live at 513 and I own 515 9th Street.
I have no problem with the with the rentals that are going on, okay? But sometimes, okay, they have the proper parking, and then you've got two places. Sometimes the people that park there will sublease a room, you know, and then they park, there's a picture, I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know where to go with this. But from where my house is all the way down 9th Street, it's no parking on the pavement. And then the other side, you have a curb, okay? It turns into the Mekong Delta when it rains. I've been raking that and taking care of that and cutting the grass, as well as my neighbor who lives in the condominiums next to me, for 18 years. Now you're having people park there for weeks, 10 days at a time. And you have the grass growing up to the chassis of their car. You know, so when the property manager shadow on or cuts the grass, you can't get around it. And I cut it. I get out there and I rake it. You know, there are times, now I've learned what I need to do now, call that 311. But there are times that a fire truck cannot get down that road because of the parking on the side. When you pull into the road, make the right-hand turn to go to these ARPs, there's like a 17-foot stretch to turn. Now they're parking on people's front yards, on the side yards there. And I actually talked to a fireman that was making a round, okay? And he said that his hook and ladder could get in there, but a regular fire truck couldn't. And, you know, it's just a mess, you know. The problem, now we got cameras, I've got cameras, so when the people from Chicago pull out and throw beer cans in the front of my yard, and throw beer bottles on my daggone flowers and break the glass up that I just kick into the side of the yard, we can see it. And I know Star and Bradley, I mean, it's the best neighborhood of Shadow on. I mean, we had a place where there was one house that they ended up putting 4 houses in. And maybe there's some illegal stuff going on in there as far as how they rent and what they do. And these people park their cars, and you call the city, there is no, my understanding, there's no time limit of how long a car can park in a place. You know, you say it's abandoned, it can sit there 10 days. And then, you know, you know, in front of my house is all nice and done. I got trees 10 feet off the access. You know, I cut the front. I cut the whole side of that road sometimes, you know, when Butch can't do it, you know, for his condos, the grass grows high. Hey, I'm cutting the grass. You can ask any one of my neighbors, you can ask them, you know. But that parking is just, you know, out of control, you know. And I've talked to the manager. She's awesome. She screens good. You know, she makes sure it has people. I have no complaints at all about what's going on, you know, when people, I even let people park in my place. You know, when they're having parties or something, or there's extra people, I have a 4-spot parking spot. You know, I'm like, hey, well, hey, you're renting Brad's place, hey, park here, it's safe. But, I mean, if we could get, I don't know where to go, but if we could get that parking taken care of. And there are times that you cannot get a fire truck down that street because of that. It's no parking on the pavement, so if somebody is on the pavement for 2 inches of their tire, you know, what it's doing is undermining the new road they just put on there, and it's all crumpling up. You know, and I rake it, you know, storms come, I dig ditches to the lake where the drainage goes in the Lake Holly, and that's my only problem with the neighborhood. We've got 1, 2, 3, almost 4 of these rentals, okay? Then you have a place where there was 1 house and they built 4 units. And they turned around there and allowed 2 parking spaces for those 4 units. It was a new complex to Bouchard built, you know, maybe I don't know how many years ago, okay? And it's just, okay, so you have the 2 places, and they put these special signs up for the people that own the houses, and now the city's making them take them down, you know? So it's like, hey, here's buy a house, and this is your special parking space. So parking is really, really an issue. And now that we got the cameras, and call 3911 or call the police, or I know what to do, you know, if that's the case down the road.
Mr. Vane, the parking is, I'd like to sort of dial back to the applicant here. Do you have a problem with parking with him specifically?
I don't have a problem parking with him, but there are times that these rentals
Well,
have more parking. I mean, they're allowed 3
More
places.
cars.
They might have 5 people. Okay? You have a place where you could park 3 cars straight in, and then they'll put the 4th car behind it.
right, I understand that.
I
but-
get that, you know?
No, well, we don't get that. So we're not okay with that. But what I do want to know is, the applicant, are you next door to him? Are you the other half? You across the street? Okay, that's all right.
We've got pictures, but, you know.
But is his tenants or his short-term rental people, are they not parking appropriately? Or is this just a general problem for the
I've seen
area?
that happen, and then I talked to the manager, he says, Butch, just call me, you know, and I just let it go, you know, and you know, and now I know what to do. But I mean, when they have 3 spots, and then they sublet the rooms that they're renting,
Well-
and then 2 other people park, and they park on the side of the road there for long periods of time, you know, they don't park, I mean, they're parking on the street.
From his place?
Across the street. I mean, where it says no parking on pavement, you know, so everybody parks in the dirt.
Do you support this?
Yeah, Mr. Edmond?
Are you saying that his short-term rental tenants are subletting their place?
I've seen that on the street. I mean, I think that.
No, this applicant, Mr.
I've
Gibble,
seen.
Mr. Gibble.
See, we're focused right now on Mr. Gibble's place, and we understand there's other problems.
I
but Right now, we have
suspect
to.
maybe, but I can't say, I mean, okay.
Okay.
I mean, but.
And you had it right, if there are other problems, other issues on the road with any other
Where
parking,
do I take
call
this?
311.
How do we, you know, call that number?
Because if cars are sitting on the road longer than a certain time, I'm sure there's a zoning.
I didn't think it was
Hold on a
legal
second,
to
hold on a
have
second.
2 cars
Hold
parking
on
on
a
a
second,
curbside.
hold on a second. If there's cars on the road longer than a certain period of time, isn't there,
If it's public right-of-way, people can park in the public right-of-way if it's allowed for parking, as long as they have proper tags and.
okay.
Okay, so when the grass grows up to,
Well, they shouldn't be parking somewhere where there's grass growing up underneath the
well,
car.
it's there, and, you know, I mean, they park right up against the whole side there. I mean, I can take pictures and bring it into you one of these days, you know? But, I mean, it's.
Well, that probably, Mr. Bain, and I guess what we're trying to do here is we're trying to separate the applicant, Mr. Gribble. Because that's what we're here to hear right now.
Where do I take this to?
The other you can take to,
Okay, so somebody.
hold on, one second. Just give us 1 second to find the solution for you, and we
So,
can do that.
There are 2 things that I'm hearing as well. So there was something brought up about the potential permitted parking program, which has a process to go through, which is handled through our parking management, which is through the SGA office. We can discuss that. That does take a lot of legwork and a lot of agreement with the entire neighborhood to handle. But that is in planning's purview as well, so now that we are aware and there's concern. However, it doesn't fix the issue with the short-term rentals, because if there is a residential parking permit program, we prohibit the allowance of guest passes when there's a short-term rental in use, so that they are not parking on the street, they are parking in their parking spaces that they have showed us.
Correct. but
So,
they have extra
so
people
it,
parking. I
right,
mean,
and so it wouldn't be permitted,
It's
so.
1, 2, 3, maybe a couple illegals.
So,
And then the whole street is turned into that, you know, and then they pull out there, and they're from Chicago, and they're throwing their beer cans in the yard.
understand, and so the key is that becomes
But, I
if
mean-
there's a littering, trespassing, other
So
enforcement
now we
issue.
got the cameras, so I can call that 311 number?
Well, you can call that number, and you
Okay,
can
and then
always,
If somebody is parked where a fire truck can't come down my street, who do
well,
I?
that fire truck's gonna make a phone call.
Yep.
You don't need to worry about that. If the fire truck can't get through the street, the
Well, I mean, my
fire
concern would be, okay, I mean, I've been medically retired for 12 years, and there's old people on the end of the street, it's a dead end, you know, and it's like, they can't get through there, they couldn't get through there.
What street is this?
Ninth
Next
Street.
street.
The 500 block of 9th Street, 400,
Okay.
you know.
It dead ends.
It did ends.
Right. No, it's all right, Mr. Vane. We've got a pointer, and so,
You know, I mean, and when you come down and you turn down that way, they allow, oh, hey, it's city right away, and now these people are parking like right up next to the poor woman's front yard. They sit there for weeks at a time, days at a time. You have people that don't even live in the neighborhood that are parking there. Man, send them down to 9th Street and let them pay.
well, I think you've gotten the planning department's attention on the parking on the street, and
I
I'm
mean,
sure that they will take a look at that.
yeah, the planning department, I mean, you guys allow 4 houses to be put up where 1 is, and maybe there's some illegal stuff going on. Don't even allow for the trash cans.
But I would advise you going forward today to use the 311 number.
Okay.
If you have issues.
Just call 311?
Yes, sir. If you have any issues with any of the short-term rentals.
Okay.
And if you have anything bigger than that, I would call the police department.
Okay.
Um,
So, but then what do I do when, can you have the police come down there and monitor that road with?
You'll have to discuss that with them.
Yes. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
so
not
I
the,
can't
so
help you. I
I'll,
just
I'll be
call.
honest with you, from a city perspective, the use of our police officers' time to deal with parking issues is probably not the most efficient. There are no parking on pavement signs, as you had noted previously, out here, which is required more than likely because they want access for our fire trucks. There are parking issues, but we've kind of pointed people on how to park at that point.
Okay,
So
so
we've told them to park that way, then that's how it is. If there is a violation, there are other departments, not planning in particular, that deal with this.
Right.
If there are parking issues, we can see if parking enforcement and property maintenance can go out and take a look if there are other issues of
So-
vehicles, inoperable vehicles, or other vehicles that are sitting out there.
If I take my tape measure when I know that the fire truck can't get through there, who do I call?
311.
311.
311.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You can do that, and then we
And
appreciate
then
it.
I call the police or whatever?
We'll
or-
start with 311,
And they'll direct
and
All right.
we'll work that
I
way.
mean, you know, okay, I mean, I have no, okay, it's all good.
What they'll do is
Okay.
they'll direct you to the right.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, was he supportive or in opposition?
I'm not
I just
sure.
needed to know.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
It's ambiguous.
Yes,
Yeah.
Shall we
come
say.
on.
So just to kind of wrap things up there, obviously parking is a challenge. We have the spots where we advertise that only 3 vehicles. If somebody brings a friend over, there's obviously, if they park incorrectly, we're going to be on top of it going forward. Our property manager is always available, so Butch can always give them a call. The subletting issue, I just want to go on record. We vet all of our people. I find it hard to believe they're subletted because they're already coming in with 5 or 6 people. There's only 5 or 6 places to sleep. So, but we'll monitor that since that's a concern. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is that the-
No more speakers.
Thank you. So we will close this hearing and open it up amongst the commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Redmond.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the application.
A second.
Great. Thank you.
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 13 has been approved. Our next item of business is agenda item number 20, Tara Ryan, application for a conditional use permit, short-term rental on property located at 933 Pacific Avenue, Unit B, located in the Beach District.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Tara Ryan. I think that the reason I'm here is because of the parking, the second parking spot. We're a small 600 square foot unit at the oceanfront area in a complex Pacific Place condominium, so everyone has one parking spot assigned to them. And we note with Airbnb, for anyone who's coming to stay with us, we let them know that there is only one parking spot. It's such a small space that it's mostly families. And my husband and I have 3 children, and we just came back from Christmas vacation, so we know how it is important to have a little bit more space and a kitchen and everything. So it's primarily families. We've had it in operation since March of 2018. We have another unit that has been in operation since been in February, no, I'm sorry, March 2019 is the two-bedroom, because we're grandfathered into the one-bedroom. Anyway, we have those two units, and with the two-bedroom that we're talking about today, we've had one person ask about a second parking spot over the whole year of rentals, and we offered to just split the payment with them to be in the 9th Street garage, because it's right next to us. But we also have options if our other unit had parking available, or if that garage was full, we have, they could park at the First Street, It's just such a small space that we haven't run into people needing two parking spots. So I guess that's where we're at.
You go.
In
Mr.
talking, in talking with staff, I know they've discussed this with you about 2 bedrooms, two parking spots.
Yes.
Right. Have you looked at any off-site parking anywhere besides your other rental, because you can't use the other rental as a parking place?
Well, we had looked at the 9th Street garage, but I wasn't aware that that was something we could, we can pay for a spot there, because we're okay with doing that. I just, I didn't even know that the zoning person didn't approve this today. This is the first time I'm hearing of it sitting here, so.
Kevin, can I ask a quick question? Is that okay, that 9th Street parking garage, if she came back with an approval for that parking spot in there, it would be okay?
Yes, absolutely. Kay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we could condition to that effect where, should that happen.
That she needs to produce a lease from the 9th Street garage for one parking space for this short-term rental.
So it could be approved with that condition, and we could move forward.
So what we're probably going to have to do, what we're really going to have to do, because I'm sure you don't want to deny this, because we, like I said before, we spent 2 years coming up with this plan, and we really need to follow it.
Yes.
So if we could defer this, and you could go get that lease from the parking, or from the parking garage, bring that back to staff, and it will probably fly right through.
Do I have to come to another
No.
planning
Can we do
commission?
Can they do it administratively?
No,
No.
as Mr. Kemp had noted, more than likely, if for efficiency, you may want to add an additional condition.
Put it
that-
in the condition.
And that it has to be required, it has to be provided before they can operate legally, so.
Okay.
Okay, so they don't have to have it right now? We don't have to defer this? We can approve it with that condition?
Right, and we will hold it from going to city council until that's acquired.
Okay, yeah, we would just not send it up
Okay.
until we get the lease.
So do you understand what that means?
Do I turn it into?
Mr. Kemp.
Are you Kevin?
Not the Kevin that
No,
does
okay.
support, but, he works for me, so I will speak with you after we wrap up here. I'll touch base with you and fill you in.
No, yes, that's not a problem at all. We're happy to do that.
Perfect.
Yes.
One thing is that's a recommendation from the staff. So that wasn't that was just their recommendation.
We're very new to this. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and this helps me not go back to work, so.
Good. Thank you. All right, to close this and open it up amongst the
I'll make a motion.
commissioners?
I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
approve it with the condition that they get a lease for parking, and that be prior to city council action.
Second?
Second?
Vote is open.
Beach.
I got it.
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 20 has been approved with conditions as amended. And our last item of business is agenda item number 27, CEBT Properties LLC, an application for a conditional use permit, short-term rentals on property located at 400A 27th Street, located in the Beach District.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, as for the record, Eddie Bernard, Virginia Beach Attorney representing C&C Development. Mr. Chris Settle is here this afternoon. It's the last item. Try to be brief. Try not to hopefully lose anybody. You have petitions, support, 13 signatures. I think it's 11 property owners. So, can we show the plan? Do we have the plan? There we go, the plan. This is an interesting interesting situation. What we have is a 3-bedroom, new construction, and we have 2 parking spaces, plain and simple, and we have a 3rd parking space that we will create, which is an extension of the driveway. However, the setback of the dwelling is 8 feet from the property rather than 9. My client owns the property next door. My client agrees to put a perpetual easement on the 1 foot by 18 or 19 feet of the new driveway so that that parking place is legal and in perpetuity, forever. Meets the 3 parking space requirement. Before I go any further, case 14 on today's agenda and a case that was on last month's agenda over in Centerville. In both of those cases, staff recommended approval of the short-term rental based on a parking space, one of the required, like on case 14 today, where half of the parking space, plus or minus, not 1/9, but half, is in the public right-of-way. In the public right-of-way. It is not likely in our lifetime, but at some point that right-of-way may need to be widened. Our parking space with a perpetual easement 1 foot on the adjacent property in perpetuity that my client owns and will place there isn't going to go away because the street gets widened. Yet, that's not deemed to be sufficient. I have a hard time understanding how that line gets drawn. So that's the reason for their recommending denial, is because that parking space, which is all on private property, which will all be in perpetuity, again, all but 1 foot of it is on this piece of property, isn't sufficient, whereas parking spaces that are in the public right-of-way, they're in the driveway portion of the improved right-of-way, but that right-of-way could go away because it could need to be widened. I have a difficult time understanding the line drawing there. The other suggestion that has been made is, well, you can take down the existing wall and move it in 1 foot. There's a sizable cost to doing so, as one can well imagine. The good news is, if that were to happen, the 1 foot overhang would be okay under the Old Beach guidelines, and we would not have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We're here because we would like the commission and ultimately city council to approve this based on the fact that there will clearly be 3 parking spaces that won't go away under any circumstance, and don't really understand clearly why this is somehow inferior to parking spaces that are half in the public right-of-way. Again, I'm not talking about the improved portion. The only improvement that they're on is the driveway. But as we all know, our driveways, the first 8, 10, 12 feet is public right-of-way, not our property. So that's why we're here. We believe that this is every bit as reasonable, in my view, more reasonable than allowing the parking to be met by driveway in the public right-of-way. But again, having said that, I also, I appreciate Kevin, Will. This is a lot of stuff, a lot of line drawing that no one in all the years that you all have had to deal with this issue necessarily has thought about or has, and there hasn't been any, there's got to be dialogue about it. I'm not trying to be overly critical at all. I'm just trying to point out, what the parameters of the issue are. So, happy to answer any questions.
Question. He owns the house next door?
He owns the property next door, redeveloped the house the property next door, along with redevelopment of this property.
Is that going to be sold, or is that going to be used as a short-term rental?
Sold, I believe. Nope.
Gonna be
Short-term rental. I'm sorry, short-term rental. And I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Weiner. The other thing I want to make sure everyone understands,
our engineers have absolutely assured us that this will meet all of the impervious surface, lot coverage, every zoning requirement. In other words, there's not a situation where this is in any way causing either property to be out of conformance with all regulatory requirements. Sorry.
Okay, this is a question for staff real quick.
Sure,
Another question for you. Explain to me again, if he owns the property next door and he can't take the driveway a foot over into that property, what's that reasoning?
So it's my understanding that because of the zoning classification, off-site parking isn't permitted in a residential district. Again, we're trying, as Mr. Burdon had noted, we're trying our best to find logic as we try to create these and be as consistent as possible as we're trying to figure this out. And that's where it ends up being a use question versus can the pavement go there? Now, that being said, as Mr. Edel had noted and Mr. Burdon, there is another application for a short-term rental going to council for review and their decision right next door. If it gets approved, wrapped up together, ostensibly there's potential for it not to be considered offset. I don't know. We're in an area where we're not really.
That's why I'm asking
we're having
questions,
trouble,
because,
so.
I mean, we got to figure out this parking situation with these houses. Real quick, I'm gonna throw this out there. I mean, you have a front yard. Could you take the slab into the front yard and make a part of a driveway right there? Could you not do that? You can't do that?
No,
No.
if you look at the site plan, the porch is relatively close to the front property line.
I'm looking at it right here. It seems like you have room. It seems like you have room from the porch to the curb.
No, you need, so it's 18 feet to the inside of
Is
the
it? Okay.
garage.
All right.
So that would be the minimum standard. And because we are in the old beach overlay, there are requirements to be built up closer to the street.
Sure.
So,
Okay, I'm just asking.
So, Mr. Burdon,
I mean, the only other,
Mr. Burdon, question.
yes.
So if Mr. Edel built these in order for them to be a short-term rental, that's the way I'm understanding it, because he's built this one and it's turned it into a short-term rental, and you just told us that the next one's supposed to be a short-term rental, and the parking is deficient.
These were all underway before all this stuff came about. It's a long process to get to the point where you're building these, so that they weren't, the approvals and all the permitting was before the short-term rental regulations were even, when there's all being debated. It's gone on for 2-3 years. So the regulations aren't spelled out. In fact, it doesn't mandate the parking. We're interpreting it that way, which I'm not arguing against. So these are brand-new regulations. These are not something that's existed, and the development process of buying and getting approvals and redeveloping property goes on for years before it ever gets to this stage. The only other alternative would be to get a curb cut off of the opposite street and put a pad behind the unit. That could be done. But again, I don't think the better policy is to encourage more curb cuts. I think we're better off to have the driveway. And there are driveways, I would bet that there are probably close to 1,000 driveways in the city of Virginia Beach, part of which are on other people's property. It's not unusual at all, not necessarily this way, but people have driveways that are off and over the property line. We deal with them in doing real estate closings all the time. So it isn't something that's, I don't know where the negative, what would be negative about it? And it is 9/10, or excuse me, it is 8/9 of the driveway on this piece of property. We're talking about a very minor.
Negative, I think it's our guidelines of what we're using right now, according to what short-term rental and what's not, is parking. It's the only way we're able to take care of it. And so when you don't meet the parking, just like the lady before, you figure out another way to go.
The lady before has no parking. This
Right.
is parking.
And
we also can get another we can get a fourth parking space, but it's not within 500 feet. Okay, so this is clearly a parking space that is not in a public right-of-way on this piece of property in a way that meets all zoning requirements. And I get exactly what Mr. Tahan is suggesting is we need to figure out, does it set a precedent that's problematic because it's, a ninth of a parking space versus a half versus 3/4 versus the whole parking space being on another residential property? I get that. But if you're going to say that 1/9 of a parking space with an easement in perpetuity doesn't meet the whatever intent, but a half of a parking space in the public right-of-way, which is also not on the property owner's property, does, that's the part I have a hard time understanding, how we're drawing those lines. That's what I'm asking, and it's rhetorical. I'm not expecting you folks to answer that question. But it is something that needs to be given consideration and thought, that we're doing things that are logical and make some defensible precedent, for lack of a better word.
Mr. Redmond.
I'm sorry.
I think I can answer that nonetheless, and that is, we have this process. Ordinance says, got to get a conditional use permit. We're going to look at them each one at a time. You don't have to set a precedent about whether it's 1/9, 2/9, 8/9, 7.45/9. I frankly accept your argument, now that I've heard it. But the truth of the matter is, I think very frankly, in the end, we're going to regret this process of requiring a conditional use permit, because we're going to have dozens of them every time we come down here, so City Council.
That's another story.
Nonetheless, that's another story. Nonetheless, it's not setting a precedent when you have to decide it anew every single time. Every single time, we're going to have to make a decision, and we're going to have to apply our judgment on each individual case, each individual property. The design of it, its site design, its architecture, how close the buildings are to one another, it's all in play each time. All over again, we're going to reinvent the wheel every single time. So I throw that out. Very frankly, I think what the applicant's going to understand out of this, and a lot of other people who develop properties for this use are going to understand, is they have to be more prescient about how they're going to develop these with regard to the topic of parking. I don't know what particular use that little cubby hole that's not a garage serves in this building, but maybe that could have been a garage and this wouldn't have been all that necessary. Be all that as it may, it seems to me if this is in fact a perpetual easement, right? Doesn't matter whether it's a short-term rental or it's sold, it runs with the land. That's on the seller when he sells it, if he chooses to do so. If not, then the only skin that's coming off someone's back is his own. So in any event, I've gone on too long, but the truth of the matter, there can't be a precedent set if we've got to do it again and again and again and again. That's the answer, in my view.
Mr. Redmond.
Let me answer one thing. The reason that the garage is the way the garage is exactly what you all spoke about this morning in the informal. Surfboards, the little street legal cart that you can go to the beach. That's the reason. That's it in a nutshell. It wasn't built for
As a garage.
a parking space as a garage.
I understand that.
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Chair, I got one
Yes.
question, and I'm going back, and I appreciate the keen eye you had. I usually catch these things, but I just got to know, because I wasn't here in the two-year term of you putting this thing together. Mr. Tahan, on the off-street parking, is that what it's called?
Correct.
Required one per bedroom?
Correct.
So did we make a mistake on 14?
No,
If
so.
it's half on, half
So
off?
during the presentations to city council, and as you know, I was not here as well during those 2 years. I had a different short-term rental. But my understanding is, as it was presented and discussed to city council during that time frame, that particular instance of actual parking where the driveway exists and some of it's in the right-of-way was specifically talked about by city council, and direction was provided to address that. Mr. Kemp, is that correct?
Yeah, it was discussed that there should be flexibility when reviewing these. In that case where it hangs over into the right-of-way and it's not blocking a sidewalk, and there's really no danger, where essentially that property is functioning as their property even though it's in the city right-of-way, that's more than reasonable to use that to accommodate parking.
So flexible, so we got.
It was the flexibility was the discussion, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And like Bobby, I didn't participate in any of this stuff either, because anyway, I won't say because, but
I stayed out of it. And I'm not standing up here trying in any way, shape, or form to be argumentative or accusatory or anything. I'm just trying to get people to look at things from different perspectives. I appreciate what, what Kevin said. I wasn't aware that that was stated, but flexibility, I think, is exactly the right term. And that's where I think this deserves flexibility. And that's my only point.
Any more questions? All right, we're going to close the hearing and open it up amongst the commissioners. Mr. Edmund?
I agree with what David said about how we have to approach these things. Looking at this particular piece of property, Mr. Edel, as his counsel said, when he started developing this property, he didn't have in mind, he didn't know what the ordinance was going to say, whether it was going to be an ordinance or not be an ordinance. So he didn't come up with he didn't miss out on the garage thing on purpose or anything like that. It's just, it is what it is. There it is. So, are we going to work with it? And is it going to meet the requirements? And the only way it doesn't meet the requirements is 1 foot of parking, which they have solved by getting, as Eddie said, this is important, a perpetual easement recorded that runs with the land, runs with this property forever. So this property is always going to have that 9-foot wide space for parking, unless somebody, I don't know, it's going to have that. So I think it's a good application. I don't see anything wrong with meeting the requirement by a permanent easement. So that's important. A lot of people want to have agreements. We got an agreement. We had to sign a piece of paper where that doesn't work. It's got to be a permanent easement in this type of case so that we know it's going to be there in perpetuity. So I'd make a motion to approve it.
Oh, hold on one second. Yeah, Mr. Weiner.
I don't know this, so I'm asking the question. What happens when they go to sell the property? Does that easement go with the property?
It runs with the land
Runs with
forever.
the land?
Forever.
And who actually approves that?
Approves it.
I mean,
There's no property owner.
necessary.
So the property owner owns both properties, so he can approve it to himself, basically.
Exactly.
After the city attorney's office approves it, because we're not going to let it go to record until we approve it.
Oh, yeah, it's a declaration of easement that encumbers one piece and with the burden of the 1 foot, this lot has the right perpetually to use for parking, and it benefits this piece of property, and it's forever. And we certainly have no problem with the city attorney office reviewing it. But that happens in real estate on a fairly common basis. But
No? Anybody else?
Well, 2 years. We spent 2 years doing this. And, 3. Three. We've spent 3. It looks like 4 coming up.
Virgin into full.
Felt longer than that.
And I have to be honest, I'm not real comfortable with this. We kind of tried to set guidelines for where we were and how to keep ourselves in check. But under the circumstances with the easement, but I think that we need to certainly work on this a little bit harder. And even though each one is new, every time we look at it, it's different. I just don't want to start making exceptions every single time we come up to every single thing, because now we just start making things up as we go along, and I just don't think that is the right thing to do going forward. Mr. Weiner.
Mr. Verdon, can I ask you a question? The next houses that are coming up, are they in compliance? Are we going to be going through this
Those have
again?
already, y'all approved those.
Oh, we
They're in
did? So
compliance.
this was the only
They've
one?
already, yeah.
Okay.
This was deferred back in December. You
Fine.
approved the other ones because they meet every requirement.
Does the client have any more houses being built that are not in compliance, that are going to be short-term?
No.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
I'll hold you to that.
Because we don't, I'm not going,
Again, I'm not,
I'm
I'm truly
I'm
not
just
trying to
telling you
be,
where
I'm
I stand.
not trying to be, yes,
Okay.
you know, I understand. I say, I
Because
just,
we're going to have to,
well, I think the key word is truly is flexibility.
I understand.
And you all can draw the
I am a
lines.
great flexible person, but if we can dig ourselves into a,
We, just be aware, we have spent, and again.
I know how long we've spent. and
Well,
they've
I also appreciate that we've been working with staff to look at all the alternatives as well.
I
Okay,
understand.
so we
I understand.
we haven't been trying to jam something. If there was another way to fit it in, but we would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and get a variance to move the wall out
I'm
to make
not-
the
I'm-
garage bigger. I mean,
It's all good. I'm
Okay.
just,
just didn't want you to think we were doing this, you know.
I just want to put it on the record. That's all. Okay. We have a motion?
I made one.
Okay.
Second.
We have a second?
I would recommend as an amended condition, or a stated condition, as Mr. Enman had noted, that a perpetual cross-access easement for the parking space, as noted on the site plan, shall be recorded after review and approval of the city attorney's office.
I'd adopt that.
Perpetual parking easement.
Perpetual parking.
Because it's not cross-access, it's just parking.
And it's not just the easement, also, it's also just the general construction of that, the size of that space, so that it would be 9 by 18.
So in the proposed plan, it is noted showing the correct size.
Okay.
So that's why the references to the plan that was provided, tying it up with the easement.
Oh, shoot. The vote is open.
By recorded vote of 9-0, agenda item number 27 has been approved with conditions as amended.
I believe, is there any other further business that we have today?
No, ma'am.
No. If none, on behalf of my fellow commissioners, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today and thank the planning director and his staff for their excellent work. And we'll see you next month. We are adjourned.